Okay, we're continuing our study on the United States Civil War, moving to another primary source that is essential in understanding Lincoln. And I truly believe, as a Lincoln scholar and a Civil War scholar, that if you don't understand Lincoln, you don't understand the war. In fact, there's a really great quote in a book by Lerone Bennett Jr. called Forced into Glory. I wish I would have thought about having this ready, but it just kind of hit me. As I was saying, you have to understand Lincoln, you have to understand, to understand the Civil War, you have to understand Lincoln. And it is a quote, and I know I have it marked. His story. Let me see. Well, not to hold up this video, but what it says is that it is perhaps Lincoln is the key to understanding the formation of the country. Here it is as I get to it. Lincoln is a key, perhaps the key, to the American personality, and that what we invest in him and hide in him is who we are. Again, Lincoln is a key, perhaps the key, to the American personality, and that what we invest in him and hide in him is who we are. I am arguing that several things, that Lincoln is not the great emancipator, Father Abraham, and for all intents and purposes, he did not end slavery, and nor did he intend to. That is not to say that Lincoln was not a great president. That is not to say that Lincoln should not be revered in history. That is not to say that Lincoln was a bad person. What I am saying is that historians and American elitists have used the story of Lincoln to formulate propaganda to elevate the status of the United States and of white people. The story of Lincoln has become the redemption of American white people, and one of the greatest atrocities that they committed being that of slavery, probably the worst being the genocide of Native Americans. So in getting to the Civil War, I must contextualize Lincoln, because so many people think they know Lincoln because we've always been taught Lincoln freed the slaves, Lincoln loved black people, Lincoln did this, Lincoln did that. And that's really not what he did. Lincoln was a man of his time. He was a white man that did not come from the aristocracy and educated himself, elevated himself into American politics, and believed in the country in which he elevated himself in. And the thoughts and predilections of the day he shared. Is there evidence that he overtly disliked black people? No. Is there evidence that he loved black people? No. Is there ever evidence that he was distinctly indifferent to black people? Yes. And one of our the address on colonization, which was the previous video, showed where he had said, you know, perhaps black people have had the worst treatment that one could imagine, but I'm not here to talk about that. That kind of indifference aligned with the indifference in his letter to Horace Greeley on August 22nd, 1862, begins to show who Lincoln is in his own words and helps us to see how the primary sources, Lincoln himself, tell us and illustrate to us who Lincoln is or was, his intentions and his thoughts, and how they don't match with modern scholarship of Lincoln, historic scholarship of Lincoln, traditional notions and understandings of Lincoln. So we have to ask ourselves, why is who Lincoln is reported to be by well-studied scholars so different than what the primary sources and Lincoln himself say who he is? So again, today we're going into probably the most telling primary source of who Lincoln was. Okay. Lincoln didn't write any books. So it's very hard for people to know what they thought, what he actually thought. So it's generally with the way that we can figure out the true Lincoln, what he thought, what he felt, is going to be limited to his legislation and his speeches primarily. And if you can find any personal communication between. But it's primarily going to be his legislation and his speeches. But today we have a piece of communication. Now, when you do hear of the letter to Horace Greeley being written, Lincoln is actually answering a letter. Horace Greeley had published an assessment of Lincoln in a New York newspaper. And he stated that Lincoln did not actually respond to his editorial, but used it instead as a platform to prepare the public for his altered position on emancipation, which is this letter. Horace Greeley was stating to Lincoln that he felt that his position was too soft on slavery. And it's in this letter that Lincoln actually speaks directly on how he feels about slavery and how he feels about black people and how he feels or sees slavery as a priority, and if so, how. Now, here's the letter. Honorable Horace Greeley, I have read yours of the 19th addressed to myself through the New York Tribune. If there be in it any statements or assumptions of fact which I may know to be erroneous, I do not now and here convert them. If there be in it any inferences which I may believe to be falsely drawn, I do not now and here argue against them. If there be perceptible in it an impatient or dictatorial tone, I waive it to deference to an old friend whose heart I have always supposed to be right. So he's saying, I'm not taking this personal. This is not personal. I'm assuming You're pulling me to the side. Well, not pulling me to the side. You printed this in the paper. But he's playing politics, right? He's saying, this is not an adversarial letter, even though probably what you're about to hear is not what you want to hear. As to the policy that I seem to be pursuing, as you say, I have not meant to leave anyone in doubt. I would save the Union. I would save it in the shortest way under the Constitution. The sooner the national authority can be restored, the nearer the Union will be the Union it was. Now let's stop right there. He's saying the faster we can fix this, the closer we can keep it to what it once was. There's no desire to really change the Union and the structure by Lincoln. He's trying to catch it before it gets too far off the rails and keep the country as it was. So that's very important, which means I don't have a problem with slavery. Slavery is the primary currency. It is the base of the economy. The ships that were being built for slavery, the insurance for the ships being built was for slavery. The industrial complex in the North was processing raw goods from slavery. Tobacco, cotton, sugar. All right? So to keep the country as it was says a lot. But we'll keep going. If there be those who would not save the Union unless they could at the same time save slavery, I do not agree with them. Again, if there's somebody who would not save the Union if they can't save slavery, we don't agree. That's what a lot of the Southern people would think. We'll save the Union, but slavery got to stay. No, it's we'll keep slavery, even if it means tearing down the Union. He's saying I don't agree with them. If there are those who would not save the Union unless they could at the same time destroy slavery, I do not agree with them. My paramount objective in this struggle is to save the Union. It is not either to save or destroy slavery. My paramount object in this struggle is to save the Union and is not either to save or destroy slavery. That's Father Abraham. That's the great emancipator. He's telling us that's not what I'm doing. This persona has come subsequent to his death. He's telling us who he is, what he's doing, the priority of slavery, and what his priorities are. Where was I? Okay. If I could save the Union without freeing any slaves, I would do it. If I could save it by freeing all the slaves, I would do it. And if I could save it by freeing some of the slaves and leaving others alone, I would do that also. What I do about slavery and the colored race, I do because I believe it helps to save the Union. For what I forbear because I do not believe it will save the Union. Now he's saying anything that helps or hurts black folks is only coincidental. I have no stake in black folks. Again, it's right here. This is Lincoln saying this. This is not a secondary source. This is not a person who knows Lincoln. This is Lincoln. And funny enough, we're not taught about this. We're not taught about this because it doesn't align with the national narrative. It doesn't align with the national propaganda. And even today, you have Republican leadership quoting Lincoln and other historic Republicans saying, we ended slavery. No, you didn't. Lincoln didn't. I shall do less whenever I shall believe what I am doing hurts the cause. I shall do more whenever I shall believe doing will help the cause. I shall try to correct errors when shown to be errors, and I shall adopt new views so fast as they shall appear to be true views. I have here stated my purpose according to my view of official duty, and I intend no modification of my oft expressed personal wish that all men everywhere could be free. Now, I don't understand why he put that last statement in there. And to not just conveniently ignore it like historians have done to many things in history, I have to deal with that. I can only assume that when Lincoln said he did not like slavery, that he was sincere, that he truly felt, as Nixon felt, that people should be able to benefit from their labor. Now, Nixon was extremely racist, but he felt black folks were going to mess up because they were inferior, not that a system should be set up to ensure they fail. I don't know if Lincoln was as far as Nixon, but I think theoretically he felt that should not be. But to the extent to doing something about it, it wasn't that important to him. He did feel that the Constitution protected property. And he did not feel that a moral code superseded a patriotic code or a legal code or the constitutional code, to be most specific. So in this, we take on Lincoln in this aspect of colonization, getting rid of black folks. We just talked about his address on colonization, where he's telling black folks, the Civil War is your fault. Your presence is a problem for us white people. And then he says, I really don't care about slavery. Whatever happens to black people, pro or con, is completely circumstantial. My area, my focus, my care is on saving the Union. We have to take these primary sources seriously to know who is leading the country at the time of the Civil War and to truly understand why colonization was the forefront policy, and upon its failure, the 13th Amendment transferring chattel slavery to penal slavery, which was the movement of chattel slavery from the private sector to penal slavery to the public sector. Once we understand that, we can then understand why the 13th Amendment did not free slaves.